Did Games Workshop just give one of the least liked factions in Warhammer 40k one of the best Xenos books? We're going to talk about it today with Elemental Council by Noah Van Nguyen, an epic's tale of a world in turmoil as a former Imperial hive world rebels against the Imperium and seeks out the greater good. Well, sort of. So let's dive into the book and give a little background and a little bit of everything going on, as well as the characters and plot, and talk more about it. But first, I think that Noah Van Nguyen did a spectacular job picking exactly what he wanted to use to tell a story of the Tau. The Tau have kind of always been this vague kind of story. We get to see some of it through the Commander Farsight books and through the Arcs of Omen campaign, where we get to see a little bit more Farsight. But we never really get to see what the Tau actually do, what they're really like as a people. And we got to see a little bit of this with most recent Votann book. It wasn't as well executed as I would have liked, but I think what mistakes were made with the High Call's Oath were fixed in the Elemental Council. It's a very similar intention of giving us a good view of what it would be like to be part of that society, while giving us a little bit more organization and structure to understand who they are, what they believe, what their world's like, and what it'd be like fighting for that particular faction. It's something I wish we had at least a baseline for pretty much every faction in Warhammer 40k. The Imperium has a lot of this, but we don't really have a good Eldar one. The closest we can get are maybe the Ynnari books or some of the books about the past that the Eldar follow, but none of them really hit. None of them are very immersive and help us learn deeply about what being a part of that faction really means. And I'm sure you guys will comment down below. The Necrons do have a couple. The Silent King and the Trazen books, the Infinite and Divine, do this as well, which I think the Infinite and the Divine was what led Games Workshop to want to make books like this. But for now, let's talk a little bit more about the characters and the setting of the Elemental Council. But first, let's talk about our sponsor. Hey everybody, today's video is brought to you by Dubby. Dubby is a clean energy drink company that does a lot of really cool stuff. I'm not a huge energy drink person, but I've come around to these guys. They sent me this cool limited edition flavor that I've really enjoyed so far, as well as a bunch of sampler packs, and my personal favorite, Dubby Hydro. Dubby Hydro is basically Gatorade on steroids without all of the bad chemicals mixed in there. It's been really great to experiment and try that out. And unlike a lot of the super artificial, nasty tasting energy drinks, in my opinion, not a huge fan of Monster or Red Bull, but this nice clean flavor that is very few ingredients. And if we look at, I don't know if you guys can see that there, there's maybe 10 ingredients total, and most of them are fruit extracts that keep you nice and healthy and give you the energy you need throughout your day. So go check them out at w.gg/wargamer, or use the code word wargame in your checkout to get 10% off. There'll be a link down in the description below for the starter kit. You can also get other flavors there as well. I'm a huge fan of those, and I definitely would recommend it. As Elemental Council kicks off, we find ourselves in the world of Cao Quo, a former Imperial world that has fallen to the Tau Empire and is currently in the process of becoming compliant with the greater good. But there's a major problem. This world seems to have far more insurgents than would have been expected from a world that surrendered peacefully, mostly. It is a very high-driven situation where the Tau are still forced to fight despite having full control of the planet. They are constantly in battle with what they believe to be a bunch of rogue, ragtag rebels hiding in jungles and forests to avoid getting completely purged by the greater good. But a lot of the world, at least at the beginning, is pretty stable. At least the Tau think it is. Despite this, an ethereal goes missing, and Yuri, another ethereal, decides he has to go find her. And to do this, he assembles an elemental council. The council set up of every single part of the society that makes up the Tau Empire. You have the ethereal caste, led by Yuri. You have the Fireblade, that is leading the Fire caste. You have the Water caste spy. You have the Air caste pilot. You have the Earth caste engineer, and you have the Guevesa human, who kind of has the background. He worked with and served with the missing ethereal and is very driven to find her. And this council is, while not unique, is something that's very unusual for Tau society. They don't just start up these councils for anything. It's a big deal when they assemble. And you get to see this with the reactions of a lot of the main commanders and the battle leaders of the sector. They are very driven to try and help the council, which doesn't always go well. And it causes a pretty big uproar, which leads to the discovery that not only is the rebellion not just a simple rebellion, it's being led by a Space Marine from the Raptors chapter. That Space Marine's name is Artemax, and he is very, very good at stealth combat and infiltration, as his chapter is famous for. And he is beyond driven to destabilize and create a rebellion, even if it costs him and his brothers their lives. On top of that, we have a Tau faction that is being extremely oppressive and harsh with the human population and causing a lot of the rebellion. Their actions that are very, for lack of a better word, racist against the humans are destabilizing the very thing that the Tau are there to try and stabilize. And this environment sets the stage for a very epic story that is a lot of fun to read. So I definitely would recommend checking it out. And next we're going to move into a little bit of my thoughts on the story, pros and cons. So let's jump over to that and talk about the pros and cons of the book and why I would recommend it. So, like I've already said, I do really like Elemental Council. It's one of the best Xenos books I've read in a very long time. Up there with Infinite and Divine. I'm not sure which one's ahead. I honestly probably have to reread Infinite and Divine. It has been a little while to know for sure. But it is definitely one I would recommend to anyone who's interested in Warhammer 40k lore, especially Xenos lore. Or if you're a fan of the Raptors chapter, this is actually a really good story for the Raptors as well, despite everything that goes on. It's definitely got its strengths and it's got its weaknesses. So first let's start with the weaknesses and we'll wrap it up with the strengths. The first weakness that you start to feel from the very beginning is it is very jargon heavy. It uses a lot of Tau words that you have to figure out on your own in a lot of cases. It does do a lot of context clues to try and help you out. But if you don't have at least a small basis of how the Tau work and the Tau background lore, you may struggle with this for the first maybe quarter of the book. You will pick it up pretty fast, I suspect, especially if you hit up one of the wikis and just look them up. You'll be able to find them easily and understand what's going on pretty quickly. Now, this is kind of a pro and a con. It does create a lot of really good immersion, and there's not a lot of forced explanations that make it a little bit harder to get into the story, which is honestly one of the issues I ran into with the High Call's Oath, is that it didn't use a ton of unique jargon or phrasing. It was very much just a Purium adjacent story, which, given Votan's history, isn't that crazy, but it is a little less immersive for me. So while this is a con, it does have some pros. I wish they would have toned it down and eased us into it a little bit more. But this is also Warhammer 40k. They don't do anything by half measures almost ever. So I kind of expected it going in. Another weakness for me is the pacing. The pacing, while it is decent, had some struggles. There was a lot of circular pacing, as we'd call it in the book world, where you have almost a small story plot repeating over and over again. Your basic, there's a problem gets worse, problem gets resolved, conclusion type thing. And it repeats itself probably a dozen times throughout the story. I didn't sit down and count, but that was something that I noticed. It can get a little annoying and feel kind of repetitive, especially if you study pacing like I do for a living. It was a little frustrating, especially since a lot of times the resolve of the problem was the obligatory unit placement. So you had the ghost keel, or you had the Kroot that showed up to save one time, or you had the different piranhas, or you had the riptides showing up to save it. And every single time it was resolved that way, where you'd get a unique unit coming in to save the day on this one little circular problem. Now, to be fair to Noah Van Nguyen, I suspect this was done because he was given a list of units he had to include, and he wanted to give each of those units their spotlight. And this is probably the best way he could do it. It's something that I actually like. The only books that I can think of that did a better job of this would be maybe The Lion, Son of the Forest, the Horus Heresy novels, and The Infinite and the Divine. They're better at sneaking in those units in ways that feel more natural to the story. And this does a pretty decent job. It hides it pretty nicely for the first half of the book, but then you start feeling that same pattern repeat over and over and over, and it became a little predictable for me. I was able to predict the exact beats and the exact speed and exactly when the resolution was going to show up, and I was able to peg pretty close what the resolution was going to be. This started especially with the Ghost Keel arrival. I'm not going to tell you where in the book, but you'll notice it pretty fast. That's where I got thrown out a little bit. Now for the strengths, there was a lot of really good things in this story as well. Like I said, it does a very good job of teaching us what Tau society looks like as a broad stroke. Each of the characters are very unique with very different beliefs and belief structures, yet they all fit together for the greater good. You get to see the fire caste and what drives her. You get to see the earth caste and what drives her. You get to see the water caste and what drives him, the elemental and what drives him. You get to see the Kroot and what drives the Kroot to do what they were doing. And this leads to a very unique experience where you get to understand all of Tau society very quickly and very easily without having to have long expletive dialogue or info dumping to give us background. We're able to ease in and just kind of sprinkle in a lot of that background lore due to having so many different perspective characters. Normally, this does not go well. Normally, if you have more than 5 or 6 perspective characters at most, you start to struggle. But because you're framing things from very unique points of view and there's clear definitive breaks in the point of view, typically at chapters, you get a very, very clean and fluid state to really understand what you're doing. And I really liked it. I really appreciate everything that Noah Van Nguyen did and all of the work he probably had to go into with plot mapping and character tracking and making sure every character was in the right place to fulfill their part of the story, and all of the deep lore that he had to fit in to a relatively short novel for Warhammer 40k. On top of that, they do a really good job of showing the darker side of the Imperium and how brutal the Imperium can be if you're not willing to play on their team. It's a really fascinating study of the dark side of the Tau, while also showing what the greater good offers, as well as the dark side of the Imperium and what the Imperium offers. And it's something that I really enjoyed actually getting to see. you don't really get to see the Imperium versus X faction's beliefs and why people may want to fluctuate between the two. But getting to see a lot of the Tau and how the more open-minded Tau treat humans and how open they are to sharing their culture and sharing their society and sharing their empire, versus how the Imperium will literally throw lives away purely to spite the Tau, is really, really cool. And it's a perspective that I don't think we've ever seen before in books. But now that we've talked about the pros and cons, let's wrap it up with my final thoughts and get you back to your tabletop. So I appreciate everyone who recommended this book to me. It was one that I wouldn't have picked up on at face value. I'm not a huge Tau fan, at least I wasn't up until now. And on top of that, I have a very long list of books to read throughout all of my TBR, my friends' writing. I'm still trying to finish off the Horus Heresy. I've got like 2 books left there. So I've got a long list, and getting that pressure from you guys, as well as the Warhammer podcast, to actually go and read this, gave me an opportunity to discover things about the Tau that I really never would have grasped otherwise. So I definitely would recommend this as probably the best starter book if you're interested in the Tau. It does one of the best jobs I've read so far of displaying who the Tau are, what they believe, and why they fight. So definitely check it out if you haven't already, and let me know what you guys think in the comments below. On top of that, would you guys be interested in this Elemental Council as a kill team? It's something that I kept thinking throughout the entire book, that this Elemental Council kill team would be really, really fun in the kill team setting. So if you guys think you'd be interested in that, let me know in the comments below what combination you think they would be and whether they'd be a good kill team or not. And finally, down in the description, you will see our link to our sponsor. They are really, really excited to be working with us, and I'm really excited to be working with them. So make sure you go support both of us down there. On top of that, we do have a Patreon. If you've seen the last couple of videos, you'll know that this Patreon has a lot of perks coming for it, so make sure you go check that out as well. And finally, on my website, you can get Readers of the Wargame merch. This is the Tabletop Wargamer and Proud shirt. It's one of my personal favorites. I wear it all the time. You can also get the Am I Lore Accurate t-shirt as well. We'll pop that up over here in the corner, as well as the Readers of the Wargame shirt. Pop that up there. And you can check out a lot of my other stuff. I am a professional author, so I do have books there as well. So make sure you go check all of that out when you're done here. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We have a lot of really cool videos coming every single week that we cover Warhammer 40k stuff. We do cover some video game stuff as well. And I will see you guys in the next one.